Hi everyone, do not fall off of your chairs. Yes, it's me live. So I wanted to put together this video, which has been requested several times, as to how I store, display, use my buttons without actually using them. So one thing I do want to say up front is I do replace some of the modern day cheap plastic buttons that come on clothing, even designer clothing nowadays, with antique vintage buttons. So I do actually use some of my buttons on my clothing. Other times I am using them to decorate my space. So that's a big part of this video, as well as going over the various, and I mean there are dozens upon dozens of types of buttons out there. So you'll see with this particular collection, and this is a little tiny drop in the pan as far as the number of different types of buttons I have and the overall number of buttons I have. I'll even give you guys maybe some bonus footage where I'll show you where a big portion of my collection is stored. It's been sorted and it's always ready to go. So that's, in my opinion, one of the fun things about collecting is the fact that, you know, especially if you do have them in some sort of order, it's the fact that you can use them for a variety of decorative needs as well as the classic sewing. So let's get started, and I do want to shout someone out later on in this video. And she was kind enough to send me a few buttons, which was really sweet and such a nice surprise when I go to the mailbox and there's like a gift, a present, and you didn't even expect it to be there. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But I will be shouting her out in this video. It might be you, so listen. So please remember to subscribe to the channel. This is all of our information. People are actually collecting my postcards, which I think is so sweet. I do put a lot of thought into making them, and they represent me. I think I've made 4 over the years. So if you have 4 of my postcards, if you have any of my postcards, leave a comment down below in this video and just let me know which one you have, or just that you have one, or just say hi. Even if you don't have one, maybe I'll send you one of my surprise free button packets. So here what you'll see is I have several ways, and this is, I'm going to say I should have like written a list, but there's probably like 15 to 20 different ways that I display my buttons so that they're part of my life versus just being stored in a closet, because that's usually what happens. People store them in some sort of closet container, whatever, and then they take them out when they want to use them, look at them, whatever. I'll even take you downstairs. Hopefully I remember to do that. This is probably going to be a 2-part video, just to warn you up front. I will try to make each part approximately 20 plus minutes each. So here's part 1. So one of the ways that I first started storing my buttons was really twofold. So if you look at my channel, you'll see that I do something which is called junk journaling, or creating art books or art journals. This is an example of one right here. It's huge. This whole display is going to be ripped apart, you guys, so that you can see things better. As a matter of fact, while I'm talking, I'll start doing that so I can show you things one at a time. It'll be easier to see and understand. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, as we always say, down below. But when you're creating art books, junk journals, they're kind of the same exact thing. Some people might even call them scrapbooks, but they're more than a scrapbook, because it's more than open, and there's nothing wrong with scrapbooking, because believe me, scrapbooking has come a long, and I do mean a long way from when I was young. Scrapbooking back then was you opened up a book and, you know, like a photo album type book, or even one that you could paste or glue into, or you could tape things into, and then you put, you know, the stubs from your concerts and things like that in there. Now we put things that are 3D, 4D in there. These books are thick. And so they're not just paper or ephemera. And you'll see an example of that here in a second when I finish clearing out some of the stuff, which you will have come back, so don't worry. So we'll start with this. So this was probably, I'm going to say, the fourth or fifth book that I created. I started numbering them on the back, but so at the point when I made this one, I wasn't numbering them. So this is definitely one of the first 5 that I created. And I created this purely because of my love of buttons. And also I wanted a catalog, if you will. So if you think of a salesman sample, which is something you'll see in this video as well. And these are original salesman samples you'll see later on. What this allowed me to do, though, is to take the buttons I liked. I wanted, you know, to all have one home. So I could pick this up and take it with me if, for example, I was going to a button show or an antique vintage show, or there's someone out there who was interested in buttons and I was going to be going to their, let's just say, home place, whatever, for a visit or out to coffee, then I could just grab this and take this with me without taking cases and or button tins, etc. with me. I could just grab this book, and this has a great variety of buttons in it. So as you can see on the cover, I actually use some Scrabble tiles to spell out what is in here, and this is all this is dedicated to. And we actually had purchased some light bulbs. So this is, as you can see, you couldn't get more 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D than this. And it's just filled with a variety of buttons. And there's some button references on the front, which are ephemeral. So an ephemera is simply antique vintage paper or even brand new paper items. This one does tie, so I can untie it. And yes, part of the toggle is a button. So I have a zipper here on the binding. So lace, you know, you can go as, this is a label from Thread. You could go as wild as you want with these things when you're creating these books. But I think this is an excellent way to, especially if you have a very specialized collection, or you have your favorites and you want to put them somewhere. Now in this book you will see that some items, I'm telling you this up front because it will be sacrilege to some. For example, this button right here, which is, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's an S. And it's a company from like the 1950s, 60s. These were sort of like house coat or house dress buttons. Or sometimes on children's clothes, you would have these really cute sort of figural buttons, but they were always made up of plastic, which is what this is. This one, as you can see, or maybe you can't see, I hope you can, it's glued on. So that's where the sacrilege comes in. Some people are like, don't damage the button, you know, do whatever you want with it, but it's your button, do what you want with it. So here you'll see, and the majority of these are sewn in. So like this button is a little bit dirty. It does not have this button right here. It doesn't have a lot of value. Do what you're comfortable with. And I'm just going to say this now. This is going to be a 3-part special. How about that? So you got 3 videos you can watch on this entire subject, because this book alone could take the remainder of this video. So here I've sewn a button on this accordion note pad that's in this junk journal. And that's the thing with junk art journals. They're also usable. They're usable to store some of your favorite memories. They're usable for you to make special notes, etc. Here there's a game tile, and this one, yes, I did glue the button on there. And like I said, you'll see sewing and different type of references throughout this. This is a line of buttons all on their original card. I just love the shape of these. As you can see, these are sort of like a rounded triangle, and they're by a company named Basic, and all of those buttons cost 40 cents. So you know that buttons do not cost 40 cents anymore. And I believe that these, I think, came from my mother's button collection. And she was sewing mostly, I would say, in the 70s, in the end of the 1980s is when she was doing a lot of her sewing. And here we have a beautiful blue button. That's my name. So for those that are watching this video, you'll know what my first name is. Yes, there are some cult buttons in here. Look at this beautiful orange button. Stunning. And those in this page, I think you can tell, other than this button, this is a mother of pearl or a mop or a mollusk button. The rest of these are hard plastics from different companies. And the good thing is, because I'm doing this video, you'll get a short idea of how these books work. And one of the other things I do is when you guys send me cards, I keep them in this book. So you might, if you're out there and you've ever sent me a card, you'll see some of your cards in this book. And I'll show you this card right now. This is from one of our button friends. And it says Meeting Hall, a really cute card. I'm going to cover up her last name. Her name is Linda. And she's like, Mary, I don't know if you will remember me or not, but I still watch your videos. And I got some buttons from you, and I paid the postage. And I remember that you like purple and odd-shaped buttons. I know it's not much, but I thought that thought of you and how nice you were to me. Thanks again, Linda. And she has some purple buttons that she taped on here with like a 2-sided tape. And look at this nice rounded square button. It is so cool, and it's slightly bezeled. And then you have this lighter purple lilac button right here near my thumb. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that when you guys think of me. Because I'm making these videos sometimes thinking like nobody cares. But my thing is creating the videos. It's a way to document the history of the buttons. And that way when I'm gone, or if someone is like, I want to know about X, hopefully they will find these videos still out online and they will be able to use them. This is going in the book, Linda. But thank you so much. And here you'll see that these are by the Alpine Button Company. They are out of New Hampshire. And these buttons are absolutely stunning. I am lucky enough to have, as you can, I don't know if you can tell, but there's 2 sizes. These are the smaller ones. These are almost diminutive, but nowhere near. Diminutive buttons are much smaller than that. But these are what I would consider the nickel size, because they're about the size, a little bit bigger than an American nickel. And here we have one from the Art Deco era, and it's made of glass. And it has, I don't know if you could tell, but there's 3 different colors on this. There's a gold gilt and a little bit of red accent on the left and right side. This button is absolutely stunning in person. I'm pretty sure it's not getting its due diligence here in this video. And then, come on, what would a collection be without some cult buttons? So cult buttons were made from their own proprietary plastic named Cult Rock. They were out of Connecticut, which is where I live. So now you know my first name and you know where I live. And they made all different shapes, giant, you know, these big beauties to some, look, this like almost diminutive button. The color array was, think of any color in the basic rainbow. They did do mostly primary colors, but sometimes, as you can see with this aqua button, they did, you know, go a little bit, I would say almost an experimental sort of what is popular right now for the time colors, but most of their colors were primary. So this is just a small example of my cult button collection. And as you can see, they also, you know, took the same button and they would make various colors of that same exact style. This is one of my favorites. I have no idea why. It reminds me of a hat. Here we have some beautiful antique metal buttons. These are very old. These are not as old. So as you can see, I will mix newer and older, but all of the buttons that are my absolute favorites in my collection are really 1970s to the very late 1700s. That's the majority of, I would say, my collection. However, some from the 1980s have made their way into my collection because now that you look at them, they're pretty freaking cool, some of them. And some of them are so bold. And then here we have this gorgeous reverse painted lucite button, which is very rare and unusual. And here we have a button from G. Fox and Company, which is, I can't find any information out about this button, but G. Fox and Company was located here in Connecticut, in the capital city of Hartford. And it's a store that went back to the 1800s, like pretty deep, you know, far back. And I wish that I could find out more about this button. I can tell that there were 3 on this card. Actually, I think there was 4. Yeah, there were 3 on this card originally. I sewed this one into that center just to make it more of a feature. And we have this wood carved bit here, which is not a button. I just wanted to tell everyone that in case anyone asked me. This is just a piece from a broken earring that I put on there. But in these books, as you can see, you can make them as elaborate as you want. Then I have to still put a title on this page because this is more so welcome to the Waterbury Button Company Museum in a book with live real buttons, obviously. So as you can tell, there are, I couldn't even tell you, there's probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, I would say 60 to 70 buttons on this page. There may be more. But the Waterbury Button Company, once again, located here in Connecticut in the town of Waterbury. That's why it's titled such. And they go back to making buttons. I mean, they're historical. They go back really almost to the beginning of the United States. And they made buttons for the military, but they also, obviously, when there were no military conflicts, eventually they learned that they had to diversify. So they started making like machine components and other things, but everything was around sewing. And they obviously, as you could tell by some of the buttons on this page, got into making fashion buttons for some of the biggest and most well-known fashion houses in the world. And so some of them are displayed on this page. They started making them for other uniforms, like this is from an airline. There's some in here from the military. The list goes on and on. Even for the post office, public transportation, like I said, the list goes on and on as far as what they made and why they made them. So I have a lot. There's figural buttons. I just saw this little teddy bear. I had to point him out because he's so cute. And I don't have like 1,000 of these buttons. I have maybe a dozen, maybe a few over a dozen. Look at this amazing military button here. And yes, as you can tell, they worked in enamels. They worked in nickel, brass, gold, silver. There's some mother of pearl in here. The list just went on and on. What they did not do is they did not work in plastics. So like I said, this is already going on 20 minutes. So here we have some Bakelite. This is a page I started to fill in and I never finished filling it in. So that's what I do with this book, is when I feel that there's a button I want to put into it, it's sort of like, I'm trying to think it's sort of like coin collecting. When you find that coin, you put it into your special catalogs or books. And so that's what I've done with this. So that's, you know, I would suggest that if you guys do this, sort of do it that way. And yes, this book is a very thick book. This is actually a book I recycled. It used to be a history book, believe it or not. Yes, with this fancy cover. This was from a book from the 1800s. The pages were falling out. I had to shore this book up with several treatments to make it strong enough to hold all of these buttons, because this book is heavy. And obviously it doesn't fully close flat. That's why I created the toggle using this bone and even a little magnifying glass, so that if you want to see more detail of your buttons. And I showed you the button toggle. This is actually a Waterbury Button Company button. So that's how I sort of see these books, you know. So yes, this page isn't full, but I'm not just going to put any old buttons in here. These should be what I consider to be some of my favorite buttons. Some people would put their most expensive. They might put their most rare. It's up to you, but that's how I use it. But here we have, look at this giant big beauty of a button. And let's see if we can compare the size. Do I have my, so this is a silver Kennedy $50. And you can see how huge this button is in comparison. It's giant, and especially to be a Bakelite. And then also look at this Bakelite button. It's also a giant. So, I actually have a couple more that are giants, but they're not my absolute favorites. So they didn't make it into the book, but I'm sure that some will in the future. And look at this toggle button right here. It's so cool, so unique. This charm string button. And then we have some mollusk or shell or mother of pearl buttons here. All different shapes, all different sizes. Another big beauty. Let's see, and you can see I have plenty of empty pages, because that gives you room to grow. So every time I do something, I'm always thinking about room to grow. And look, another sewing reference here with some lace, some labels, this lady in this gorgeous coat, etc. And look, what else can I show you? This is a glass button. I don't know why it's the only one on that page. Here are some really cool Flapper Girl buttons, which were a gift from one of the subscribers to this channel. And then here we have what they call unusual value buttons. That was a brand. And these were mostly sold by your 5 and dime stores. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. And as you can see, it says Fashion Buttons. Grant's was a 5 and dime department store, and they made these. And what would happen is they would contract out to companies to make the buttons for them, and then they would be distributed by the department store. It even says on here, distributed by W.T. Grant Company, New York. And this was my orange section that I'm starting in the book. And I have some more examples of buttons that were 5 and dime types here on the back. Those are pink, and those are by Fashion Style Buttons, genuine. And these are really cool because these are made of pearl. It says pearl G-A-L-A galalith, which is a type of pearl plastic. I mean, they're calling it a pearl, but it's really a plastic. And they're made by Preview, and once again, made in the United States. That's when things were really made in the United States. A doggy. And here are more of those cool CHARMSTRING Bakelite buttons. Those are from the 1800s. And yes, you can add a bookmark to your little catalog that you'll create. And these are all celluloid buttons. I love celluloid buttons. We're going to go over celluloid buttons again in the future because I think they receive a bad rap. Look at the colors, you guys. Just look at the different styles. I mean, why do they receive a bad rap? There's an actual really good reason why, and we'll talk about that in the future. And like I said, all of these buttons that you're seeing and have been seeing except for 2 are sewn into this book. So there's only 2 that are glued in. And look at this giant carved shell button. Now, I don't know what kind of shell this is. It's definitely made of shell, but this is stunning. And they have all sorts of cross hatching on it that you may not be able to see. And you can also see how gigantic it is and compared to this giant 50-cent piece. And then here are some, little buttons that feature an animal.